you can be wiser as an educated advisor. Hello everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, financial elder abuse and fraud, part 5 of our series on best practices for financial professionals with attorney Ilya Lerma. All here on Let's Get Down to Business. Welcome to the 5th segment, Ilya. Are you ready? Did you strap yourself in? I sure am. We're talking about elder abuse. I can't think of anything else that ticks me off more than seeing seniors being taken care of. So now that I am one, right, that I've already graduated into the baby boomer class of the retired, or not so much retired, but, you know, I'm a Medicare man now. I see people I'm looking at files and I'm like, who did this? I was surprised that you brought up that the perpetrators many times were actually blood relatives of these seniors. What's going on with that? Doesn't family mean anything?
Well, family's family, but money is money. And unfortunately, exploitation when you have an elderly patient, or excuse me, an elderly family member who may have more savings than you're kind of used to seeing because they've put some money away, it becomes very tempting. And that's an opportunity for people who may not otherwise be criminal-minded to take advantage. And that's, again, what I talked about earlier in that exploitation, where there's a disadvantage, a mismatch of power. And so a family member may take advantage of another elderly.
Okay, as a financial professional, I'm coming into this situation, and you said this in the last segment, hey, you know, we might be the first guys on the front line to actually detect something's not right here. You know, how do I turn that person, how do I go about talking to, I can't talk to the person who's perpetrating it, so how do I do that?
Well, it's difficult because, first of all, you have to define who the client actually is. Are you still under guidance and instruction under that initial engagement letter, or have there been family modifications? Is there now a power of attorney? But I do believe that the changing landscape due to our aging population may result in the kinds of claims where, because the financial advisor didn't act, do they then become complicit in fraud that's being committed by another professional, an attorney who may be taking advantage of the client, a family member? Because if the financial advisor is on the front lines and seeing things like signatures that don't match, they're seeing unusual account activity, they're seeing a lot of transactions, they may see changes in cash flow, depending on, again, the access and information that they have. If they're not diligent in terms of reporting that information to family who could do something about it, becomes problematic. But absolutely, I do think that that's going to become an increasingly larger problem for financial professionals, and having to decide when to report something when it rises to the level of actual fraud.
Well, let's just say I'm all over that. I'm willing to do that, but who am I reporting to? See, this is my big question. I can't go to the person who's perpetrating because that's a family member who's running the show. So I see it as an advisor. Where do I go?
Well, there's certainly law enforcement. You may want to consider if you have a positive relationship with other members of the family. And again, that's why client communication becomes so important, is you want to be actively involved, not just with that client, but if they are elderly, you want to find out who has authority to act on their behalf. Because if there's changes happening to their account after they've maybe lost its mental capacity or even physical capacity to make those changes, you may be the only one to detect them. And so you may have federal reporting obligations, you may have law enforcement reporting obligations. My best recommendation is to see if initially you can get other family members involved. If there's a spouse who's still alive, or there's a responsible sibling, exactly, or child, or siblings to the person that you maybe suspect is committing the fraud.
Now, in our state of Arizona, what kind of statutes are out on the street that will protect geriatric consumers, seniors, elders?
Well, and this is where reporting kind of varies from state to state. In Arizona, where I practice, you have, and most states do have statutory schemes known as vulnerable adult or elder abuse statutes. And they're particular statutory schemes that are set up for the precise purpose of not only preventing physical abuse, but also financial abuse to elderly and vulnerable, those who are vulnerable either by mental or physical incapacity. And those statutory schemes often regulate for the particular states how reporting should occur, what the agencies are, the kinds of civil remedies that may be available. And so a good starting point may be to find out what your state requires in terms of reporting. And very frequently, states have special reporting agencies. If you suspect financial abuse or fraud, there's hotlines that are set up by state. There's particular agencies. California has several that are for anonymous reporting so that they can investigate those types of claims.
Well, again, it's really tough to get down when the family's involved in the perpetration. But look at the scams that are out there right now. And I just looked one before we came on the air. I looked at 5 of the top senior scams. I was brokenhearted, honestly. I could not believe this is going on. So we have people giving up, and this is for our consumers, give no information over the phone. And now we can't even say, the new scam is the person says on the other line, can you hear me? Okay, and they say yes, and they use that yes and apply it to something else. You know, hey, they gave me jurisdiction, they gave me permission to buy it. I'm looking at phone scams, which is still number 1. I'm looking at the scams in the mail that are there, right? How do we defend consumers from all the onslaught of people that are so crooked? I mean, I grew up in the 50s. I just can't believe our country has changed so much that they don't even treat our seniors with respect.
Well, it's a difficult question for sure. So the primary way that you want to protect the seniors is by taking your fiduciary obligations seriously. And so if you're looking the other way, when you have very clear signs that financial abuse may be occurring, you have to step in. I know as a civil attorney, I've not brought this claim, but if it comes across my desk that a financial advisor had red flags that financial abuse was occurring, and rather than reporting it or getting in contact with the family or getting law enforcement involved or even taking any steps to investigate it further himself or herself, that's going to be a claim that I would then consider bringing another party in, not just the person who committed the fraud, but potentially the financial advisor who had the opportunity to stop it. Because you do have fiduciary obligations, and if you're ignoring those and turning the other cheek because you simply just don't want to be involved, then that's very, very problematic, because you do have, and under the right circumstances, it is an obligation, an affirmative duty that you have to act in order to protect your client.
When I'm looking at the criminal penalties that are involved in this, because, you know, one thing is civil, right? I get that. But now we're talking about going to prison. I mean, there is people going into prison, they stole money from their mother. You know, they're going to prison for this. So there's criminal penalties for fraud and elder abuse. This isn't just a civil issue. This isn't just being fined. You could go to prison.
Absolutely.
Now, how many people have you said, I mean, I know that you have a practice that's pretty large and you have good historicity, but people going to prison for this, I mean, have you seen much of that yet? Or is it mostly civil penalties and they just go after their money, their assets, and repay the person that they ripped off?
Well, unfortunately, I don't really get to much of the opportunity to deal with the criminal side. I dealt in criminal law early in my career and not necessarily in the financial abuse sector. But that's an area that is continuing to grow, and I think that's what your audience really needs to understand, is that I think more and more as people develop a comfort level with having portfolios. You have portfolios that are being made available to all kinds of people from all walks of life, and you have abuse at the widespread scale that it's actually happening. Those two can potentially be a firestorm for claims against financial producers. So I think what I see in my practice won't be necessarily representative of what the future holds. But certainly, if I was a financial advisor in this day and age, I would be very, very vigilant about keeping an eye out for those red flags. And if you're suspecting fraud, be proactive. Do some research. Find the appropriate state or federal agency that applies to this particular abuse. Is it a banking issue? You know, you may have banking regulations that you want to familiarize yourself with, or is it something more circumspect, like perhaps a claim or excuse me, a misuse of a power of attorney. Maybe the attorney who's purporting to represent your client is committing some fraud. And unfortunately, those are things that happen. And if you're not looking out for your client, if I'm the civil attorney and I'm taking into account all of the negligent actors, you may be on the list because you had an opportunity to stop the fraud and you didn't take it.
Well, I want to take the opportunity. I want to know who I'm supposed to talk to. And the only one that I've been, I would say, involved with years back was I went to the banker. And I said, here's what I'm seeing. I don't know if it's true or not, but I think you should look at it. They looked at it. It was a problem. And I went to the banker because he's a stately person. People know him in the community. He would never do anything to besmirch anybody's, their reputation. And it turned out that there was some stuff going on that was really uncool. Well, listen, I want to thank Ilya for being on our show, talking about our series on best practices for financial professionals. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on the show, especially if you're going to turn somebody in, you better talk to your tax consultant and legal counsel and your compliance officer. If you're a security off, you need to be talking to your compliance officer. Step one in any of these issues that we're talking about. And remember, don't forget to subscribe to my consumer show, Steve Savant's Money, the Name of the Game, daily content that you can use on your website, social media accounts, database distribution. Hopefully it's all compliant. I'm Steve Savant. Thanks for watching.